So most guys that do multiple decades in prison, they have a lot of challenges. It's hard to find housing, it's hard to find a job, it's hard to understand the world. I mean, when I went to prison, there was no internet, there was no email, there was no YouTube channel, there was no Al Prophet, no original guerrilla convict, right? There was none of that, right? And so I had to figure out a way quickly how to function in society. But my situation was different because all through prison, I was really obsessed with figuring out how to be successful. And I'd set a goal that said, before I walk out of prison, I'll have enough money in the bank to live a full year, whether I have a job or not. And that became a goal of mine probably 7-8 years before I got out of prison. So because I was an author and I was creating these little business opportunities and ventures and I was ghostwriting books, when I left prison, I had like $100,000 in the bank. And that gave me a lot more liberty than most people that come out of prison. So I came out and I also had a very strong body of work. I'd written a lot of books. I had a huge network of support, and I had a lot of confidence that I could make it. So while I was in the halfway house, it was the end of the recession in 2012, and I was in San Francisco. And I had studied the market, and I believed that this was a good time to be investing in real estate. So I went to a real estate developer and told him about my story, kind of sold him on that I was somebody who could make things happen, and just basically told him, you're a businessman and you make deals every day, and a lot of times those deals don't pan out for many years. So I'm going to ask you to look at me what I'm going to be 5 years from now, not what I am right now. And if you can see that, then I'm going to ask you to finance a house for me. I want you to sell me one of your properties, even though I have a 000 credit score. If you could do this for me, I'm going to find a way to make the monthly payment to you, and as soon as I get credit, I'll cash you out. And that's how I started my career as an investor. So while I was still in the halfway house, I bought my first house. It just happened to be a very good time to be buying real estate in San Francisco. That was just at the end of the recession. And after a year, I was able to get credit and get a mortgage and cash him out. And as that property increased in value, I continued to leverage it, borrow against it, and buy more real estate. And that really helped accelerate my career. So while I was building my finances, I was simultaneously building these programs that I intended to sell to prisons so that I could teach and inspire people in prison and help them understand what can they do to become more successful. And I just had to learn how to use cameras and create podcasts and YouTube channels and write digital books. And so I learned all of that during my first couple of years of release from prison, while I was simultaneously building a real estate portfolio. And for the first year, I also taught as a professor at San Francisco State University. And I taught for a year. I would go into prisons as much as I could and try and teach people inside that the decisions you're making today are going to have a huge influence on what you become tomorrow. And that's been my journey for the first 6 years of Liberty. I think it was the preparations that I made in prison made all the difference, because I walked out with a lot of confidence that I could overcome struggle. I had communication skills that I thought I could sell my story in a manner that would inspire people to believe in me. And once they believed in me, I could try to paint a picture for them of what I was going to do and get them to sign off on that and invest with me. And that allowed me to launch a career that many people don't think is possible for somebody who's been incarcerated for 26 years. So I think that confidence has a lot to do with it. And also communication skills for me was really important. I was also blessed to have a lot of support that I started sowing those seeds when I was in prison and nurtured those seeds. There's an old saying, we were talking about it earlier, that an overnight success is 20 years in the making. And the reality is I started sowing seeds for my success the day that I went into prison, after I read Socrates, and then I read Nelson Mandela and Malcolm X and Viktor Frankl and Martin Luther King and so many other leaders that really inspired me and helped me learn a strategy to overcome struggle and succeed. So because I had that mindset, I came to society without this feeling of, oh my God, it's going to be really hard and nobody's going to hire me. I always looked and said, what value can I bring? And how can I create something out of nothing? And it was that confidence that has helped me. They helped me calibrate my life right when I got out of prison. But when I faced struggles in the journey, it gave me confidence that I could even overcome that. And certainly, it hasn't all been upside and positive and roses. You know, I've launched businesses that have failed. I've invested in ventures that have cost me millions of dollars. And it's just part of the journey. Because I spoke so much, the more you speak, the more invitations you get. I spoke for audiences of several thousand people in corporate sector. And it's really always about what is wrong with this nation's commitment to mass incarceration and what can we do to make it better. And my message is always the same. We need to recognize that human beings are always capable of becoming something better and evolving. And if we start from that mindset, we can create a system that doesn't perpetuate this intergenerational cycle of recidivism and perpetuate this cycle of slavery that exists. I can tell you that I think one of the big flaws in prison programs is they don't really incentivize a pursuit of excellence. They don't really teach somebody the skill set of how do I go through life? I've got a problem. How am I going to overcome this problem? What am I going to do to become successful in spite of this problem? And instead, they focus on just giving you a certificate that means nothing. The reality is if you don't change the way you think, you're always going to be a prisoner. I've met more people in society that never served a day in prison, but they were in a bigger prison than I was ever in just because of the way they think. So the reality is you got to liberate your mind first, and that's not something they teach people how to do in prison. In prison, instead, they really invest in this message of you got nothing coming, and if you're in here, you're worthless, and that's not what I believe. Socrates in his day, I spoke about, they used to have this class system that if you were from a certain class, your job was to keep the other class down. And I don't think that's too different today, right? You got people today that are in one class, and if you're from the underculture class, if you're in the prison system, you should never have an opportunity to rise. And it's my job to disrupt that. It's my job to help people believe that regardless of where you are, you can become anything you want to become. And that's what my course is about. It's about helping people recognize how do you do it. And that's what's different from other courses. I encourage people that you got to start by defining success. What's the best possible outcome for your life? Not as I define it, but as you define it. What does it mean? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And then, then for me, as you remember when I was telling you my story earlier, I said it was to think not about what I wanted, but what do the people I'm going to be around me want, right? If I want to be, a YouTube star, YouTube sensation, I'm going to reach out to Al Prophet. I'm going to reach out to Seth Ferranti. I'm going to reach out, to people who've done it and who are doing it and ask them, hey, what are the tricks? What do I need to learn? How do I learn how to edit better? How do I learn how to, create tags? How do I learn to do this, this, and that? So I'm going to look for people that can help me achieve what I want to achieve. And then I'm going to have these very clear goals that will get you there. So the course that I create is all about very practical advice of recognizing I know where I am, I know what success looks like, which is where I want to go. I know I need a plan to get from here to there. I know I got to put priorities in place, and I got to hit little priorities and little goals before I hit the bigger goals. But every time I reach a goal, I'm going to create a new opportunity. That's what success is about. That's what a mindset is about. It's about not seeing yourself as a prisoner or somebody serving multiple decades in prison or somebody who just got out of prison, but rather, what's the best possible outcome and what do I need to do to get there? And that's a question I really am always living and always asking. Yeah, Prison Professors is, I launched a lot of ventures since I've come out. Prison Professors is one of them. I started it because I wanted an easy brand. I told you earlier I had michaelsantos.com and was part of other ventures. But I started Prison Professors because I came out of prison and I was a professor at San Francisco State University. And I taught about prisons, but I was also creating programs that go into prisons. So I launched this brand first as Prison Professor, singular, and I was the prison professor, and I would create courses and content that help people understand what do I need to do to succeed. Then I brought in a partner, kind of a famous guy right now. His name is Sean Hopwood. He was a friend of mine who was an armed bank robber and became a pretty skilled jailhouse lawyer. And then he got out of prison and went to the University of Washington, became to law school. He became a lawyer. Then he was a clerk for a district court judge, even though he was an armed bank robber at one time in his life. And now he's a professor of law at Georgetown and a policy advisor on Capitol Hill. And I invited him to be part of Prison Professors, so we became Prison Professors. And then I invited my other partner, Justin Paperny, who I think is going to be featured on this show, to be a part of Prison Professors. And Justin is a former prisoner who has built a strong consulting practice to help people that are going into the system understand what they can do to position themselves for better outcomes. And so the three of us launched this venture together. And my role was in creating content that Justin could teach and consult from. Sean's role was to create policy changes, and he's been incredibly influential in both the federal system and various state systems. And together it was a pretty good partnership that changed in 2018 when I kind of stepped back and started focusing more on my real estate career. And now I'm coming back into it with my partner Justin, where we've just launched a new venture called resilientcourses.com. And we're teaching these concepts that we're talking about right now, about how do you face struggle and overcome it.